to our final session of summer camp. Woo, we have done it. 4 weeks, 8 sessions. We have done everything from storytelling to the least important ingredient, to Candyland charts, to ways to stay in touch with our database, to emailing. We have basically covered it all, except for one thing. The most important ingredient in any marketing. And that's what we are going to talk about today. So welcome back, settle in, get ready to take some notes because I have saved the very best for last. For those of you who have been joining me throughout the entire summer, I hope that you have found value in this. I hope that you are taking action. I hope that you have started to implement some of the things that you have learned. I know that I have. I have been following along and doing my own homework and working on my own business while we've been doing this. And I've also had some pretty amazing breakthroughs and aha moments. So it's a good reminder for all of us to dig in sometimes and try something new and get a little uncomfortable. So, all right, welcome back. Good morning, Erin and Janine and Nikki. I see you all joining. And Tamala, good morning. All right, let's dive in. The single most important ingredient in your marketing and also in your business. That's what we are going to talk about today, the final day of summer camp. All right, excuse me. As a reminder, the goal of Marketing Summer Camp is to inspire you to learn something new, put it into action, and have a little fun. And I hope that we have succeeded with that this summer. I'm going to start out with a couple of quotes today. One of my favorites from Albert Einstein: I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious. But this one from Dorothy Parker: the cure for boredom is curiosity. There is no cure for curiosity. And this one from Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, I think at a child's birth, if a mother could ask a fairy godmother to endow it with the most useful gift, that gift would be curiosity. I love all these quotes because they remind us that this single ingredient is one of the most important. In fact, Eleanor Roosevelt said, if we could give children one thing, it would be curiosity. And yet, when I think about the word curiosity, this is the quote that comes to mind most often. Now, maybe that is because I have a very curious cat. But when I hear this quote, it always disappoints me a little bit because we are kind of raised to hear the idea that curiosity is a bad thing. And in fact, my friends, I am here today to tell you that curiosity is, in fact, the most important ingredient. Now, when we are kids, we come by this really naturally. As children, we want to know how things work and grow and why we have fingers on our hands and not toes and why the sky is blue. And we ask all kinds of crazy and sometimes really stupid questions, but this is how we fill our spongy brains full of knowledge. Curiosity comes naturally as children. But as we grow older, we tend to replace curiosity with the need for certainty. We tend to get to the point where we realize that life is actually really complicated. And this diagram is a perfect example. This is what it feels like to run a business. This is what it feels like to buy a house. This is what it feels like to make a big decision. It is complicated. It is a little daunting. It is a little scary. And what we really want as we get older, instead of being curious about what is around that corner, we want certainty. We want to know. We want stats and charts and graphs. We want something to give us the exact answer that we need right now. In fact, this was me about 10 minutes ago on the phone with someone saying, I just need to know the answer. When really the answer might be curiosity. Now, Harvard Business Review did a wonderful study on this a few years ago called The Business Case for Curiosity. And they found that curiosity in business, specifically in our businesses, has a ton of benefits. It makes us, when we are curious, we have fewer decision-making errors. We show more innovation, whether we're in a creative or a non-creative job. We see less group conflict, more open communication, and typically we are happier people when we are being curious. So today I'm going to give you 5 practical ways that we can add more curiosity, sorry, to our businesses and our marketing. I'm so excited today that I just can't even think straight. All right, so 5 practical ways that we can add some more curiosity to both our businesses and our marketing. And this is what is going to tie everything that we have learned in the last 3 weeks up in a nice little bow. So the first one is this: follow the wonder process, or process for my Canadians. Follow the wonder process. Now, what is the wonder process? Some of you might be thinking, I've never heard of that. That's a little crazy. The wonder process is essentially the story behind almost every good book or movie or story that we have ever read or watched or seen. The wonder process is kind of that underlayered. Remember how I said in the very beginning, if you want to tell a good story, you have to have that what, so what, now what? This is kind of the underlying recipe of every really good movie, every good story. And for example, let's talk about this one, The Wizard of Oz, right? The Wizard of Oz is a perfect example of the wonder process. And it's also been described this way: transported to a surreal landscape, a young girl kills the first person she meets and then teams up with 3 strangers to kill again. That was actually used in a TV guide. And while that's true, let's look at a different way to describe the wonder process. The wonder process is basically 4 steps. And once you hear these, you are going to realize that every single movie that you have ever watched, every really good book that you have ever read follows this recipe. The first one is surprise. Allow yourself to be surprised, right? If we think about The Wizard of Oz, surprise. Something happens. The Wicked Witch comes in. She steals the dog. Dorothy runs away. She goes over the rainbow. There's a big surprise. She lands on the witch. The witch is dead. Ding dong, right? So there is a moment of surprise. Things stop being the way we've always done it. All of a sudden, there's that moment of surprise, and then we have to stop doing the things that we've always done. And in order to move forward, we have to leave ordinary behind. We have to take a risk. We have to do something we've never done before. And then lastly, we end up with a new mindset or a new idea or a new way of doing. Every great movie and book follows this recipe. Surprise, stop, leave ordinary behind, and return to extraordinary. This is the entire idea of all of the marketing ideas that I have been sharing with you in the last couple of weeks. Try something new. Stop doing things the way you've always done them. Take a risk and think about things a little bit differently. If we can follow this wonder process, we are going to be naturally more curious in our business and with our marketing. That risk is probably one of the most important. We can always stop doing the things we've always done, but we have to move forward with a little bit of risk. This is my friend Brad Montague. You might recognize the little kid on the left-hand side. He was known as Kid President and kind of went viral on YouTube many years ago. My friend Brad there on the right-hand side is his brother. And Brad once told me, Brad mostly works with school children, and he once told me the recipe he uses when he works with little kids. He sits down with them in a big circle and he asks them, I wonder who we can help. And the little kids think of everybody, the janitor, the teacher, the little kid in the class next door, the lunch lady, whatever it is. Brad then says, I wonder what's the most amazing thing that we can do for them. Well, a parade, a party, balloons, elephants. Kids have amazing imaginations. And then the last question is probably the most important. I wonder who could help us. This is where the plan becomes real. The kids say, oh, my parents could do this and my teacher can do this. This seems like a very simplistic and kind of almost fantastical recipe. But imagine if this was our entire business plan, friends. I wonder who we can help. I wonder what's the most amazing thing that we could do for them. And I wonder who could help us. What if we just sat down and answered that question for our own businesses and our own marketing? Oh, How powerful is that, right? Let's come back to that benefits of curiosity. Harvard Business Review in their study found that there were two opening lines, two sentences, two things that over every single study that they did contributed to more curiosity. They were saying things like, I wonder, and what if? I wonder if that could be real. I wonder if that would work. I wonder if maybe we've been looking at this wrong. I wonder if we tried it something differently, if something different would happen. What if? They found that using the two words, what if, became one of the most powerful ways to infuse curiosity into our business and our marketing. What if? So we come back to this question that I asked you in the very first day of summer camp. What does your customer need most right now? I wonder if I could give that to them. What if I did that in a different way? I wonder if I tried something new, how that would work. This is one of the biggest pieces of homework that I want you to take away from summer camp this year is, what does my customer need most right now? And what if? Such important and powerful words. All right, number 2, the second way that we can start infusing our marketing and our businesses with more curiosity. Choose your fighter. For those of you that have played video games, you know that is typically the very beginning of a video game is where you've got to choose your character. And it is true for us in business every single day. We have to choose who we are going to show up as. Did you know that when your brain is faced with change, basic psychology tells us that it has to choose between two things? And we like to say fight or flight or freeze, but really it comes down to two things. There are two things on the menu for our brains when change happens. We can start with assumption, or we can start with enthusiasm. Assumption looks like this. That will never work. That's not how we've done it in the past. Nobody's going to go for that. We can't do that. I can't do that. You can't do that. I remember the very first time my very first boss came in, put a big box on the front desk and said, this is going to change our lives. And it was a fax machine. And I remember clearly people in the office going, I'm going to have to retire. Technology is too much. It's too crazy. I can't, right? Negativity, that won't work. This is how it's never worked this way before. We can't do this. That is one menu option when change happens. The other menu option is enthusiasm. What if? Why not? We could. YOLO. I have an idea. What's the best that could happen? Now, we get to decide which side of our brain we choose. We can immediately go negative. We can immediately go to assumption. Nope, nah, I'm going to have to retire. That's not going to work. Or what if? Why not? Let's give it a shot. We get to choose that. Our brains allow us the choice. And when we consistently choose enthusiasm, the negativity goes away. Curiosity makes a difference. Now, I have trained my cat, not on purpose, but it has happened that every night at 8 p.m. she gets treats, and she gets them at the end of the kitchen island. I drop them right there on the floor. And so every day at 7:58, that is where she is sitting. It didn't take very long for my cat to learn that at 8 p.m., the little treat machine happens at the end of the kitchen island. Now, if we can teach our pets to tell time, think what we could teach our brains if we really tried. Did you know that we can form a new habit in as few as 18 days? It doesn't take 60 days. It doesn't take 10,000 hours. It takes just about 3 weeks if we do something consistently for us to train our brain. So imagine if for the next 3 weeks, we just asked what if instead of saying that's never going to work. What if we trained our brains that treats happen at 8 p.m., right? Now, the way we do this is we filter what comes in. If you are listening to people, if you are surrounded by people, if the people that are leading you are always like, well, that's never going to work, and we've never done it that way, and I don't know, and we're going to have to retire, and this is terrible, blah, blah, blah. That is what we are going to believe. So whatever you are putting in is what is going to come back out. This is what my mother told me all the time. Why I couldn't watch horror movies when I was a kid, because what you put in there is never coming back out. And when it does, it comes out through your mouth. So What are you putting in? What are you feeding your brain? Are you feeding it assumption or are you feeding it enthusiasm? Number 3, third way that we can start to bring practical curiosity back into our business and to our marketing. Be a tourist. Now, I was an exchange student when I was in high school. It was one of my bravest and biggest things I'd ever done up to that point. I'd never even been on an airplane. But I was flying across the world and I was going to go live in a country that had just broken the bonds of communism just 3 years earlier. And I was going to live in a place that I had never heard of. And I was super nervous. And I remember them telling us before we went, the organization that I went through, they said, here's the thing. Tourists get a bad rap. They tell us that tourists are, the ugly, loud, annoying people. But tourists are exactly what we want you to be. We want you to be those people that ask questions. We want you to not expect to always be an expert. We want to make sure that you get help, that you make mistakes, and remember that no one is good at what they have never done. So don't go expecting that you know it all. Don't go expecting that you don't need help or you don't need to ask questions. In fact, great tourists, even great travelers, ask better questions. They don't expect to be always to be the expert. They get help when they need it. They make mistakes and they realize that this is always our first rodeo. So for those of you that are going into things thinking, I can't ask, I've got to show up, I've got to be the expert, I've got to be professional, I can't make mistakes. Curiosity tells us that this is actually the better way to be. Make mistakes, get help. Don't expect to always be the expert. Ask better questions. No one is good at what they have never done. Number 4, one of my favorites, make soup. I know some of you are looking at this and you're thinking, make soup. What does that have to do with marketing? Well, I want to tell you the story of stone soup. There was a boy, he was hungry, he was approaching a village. And as he walked into town, he started knocking on doors. Please, do you have a little bit of bread? Do you maybe have something to, that I could eat? Every single door slammed in his face. Nope, I only have enough for myself. Nope, I don't have anything to share. Nope, there's only enough for my own family. Go somewhere else. After he knocked on all the doors and everybody said no, he went into the center of town and he started yelling at the top of his lungs, I know how to make the most magical soup. The soup that will feed everybody in this entire village forever. It's the most magical soup you will ever have, and all I need is a pot of water and a fire. Well, people started to get curious, and so they showed up. Somebody said, well, I could give you a pot of water. And so they did, and he started a fire, and he started to stir, and he said, you know what? What's going to make this soup perfect is I have a magic stone. When I put this stone in this soup, it is going to turn into the most magical, most amazing soup you have ever seen in your life. And the villagers said, I don't believe you. There's no way. And he said, you watch. So he drops the stone in the soup and he starts to stir. Oh, he says, it's starting to smell good. You know what it really needs is maybe just a couple of potatoes. If we just had a couple of potatoes, it would be perfect. Well, one person said, you know what? I have a couple of potatoes. I was saving them, but I could put those in. Next, he said, oh, you know what? Maybe if it just had a little salt. Somebody else managed to come up with a little salt. Oh, we're almost there. It's perfect. It's smelling so good. Just maybe a few carrots. Well, I might have a few carrots, that I've hidden away. Oh, you know what it needs? It's just maybe a ham bone. You get the idea, right? After a while, everybody in the neighborhood had come together and contributed to this stone soup. I love this page in the book. Everybody in town ran home to bring one small thing. Food flew through the air and landed with splashes in the growing soup, and soon the huge pot was full and simmering, and a wonderful smell drifted through the air. Eventually, the soup was done, and everybody ate, and everybody was full, and everybody was happy, and the boy said to the neighborhood, thank you so much. This was wonderful. As a gift to you, I'm going to leave you this magic stone. So you will always have this magical soup. And on his way out of town, he stopped and picked up a little stone off of the path and put it in his pocket as he went on his way. Now, I love this story and I loved it as I was little because it reminded me that every single one of us has something to contribute. Instead of thinking, what do I have to do on my own? A lot of you are thinking, gosh, if I have to leave here and I have to do everything Val showed me, it's overwhelming. But what if everybody around you contributed a little something? What if you looked around and saw where you could help and where you could give and maybe what they could contribute and how we could be more collaborative? What if instead of that would never work and we've never done it that way and people are too competitive, what if it did work? Number 5, the last way for us to start to incorporate strategic and simple curiosity into our business and our marketing. This idea of try again. We grew up hearing this, right? The idea is that when you fail, you just keep trying. Try again. We've all heard this saying. We've heard it as we were kids. Try again. Now, when I was writing my book, We're Gonna Need Cake, I came upon this study, and it was kind of an interesting study. They had studied the idea of failure through the lens of 3 types of activities: venture capital startups, grant applications, and attempted terrorist attempts. Now, I know that feels weird, but it was a fascinating study. And I dug into that study and it helped me build that chapter of my book on curiosity. But here's what they found. Companies that started through venture capital, people who were filling out grant applications, and terrorists who were making attempted terrorism attacks, all basically went through the same cycle. They all kind of learned failure and success the same way. And you might be thinking, Val, that doesn't make sense to me. But here's what it was. There were 2 groups. There was a group that succeeded and there was a group that failed. And I'm going to let you guess which one was which. Group A made more attempts. They made more changes, but they took more time to make changes. So every time they failed, they changed a bunch of things, but they took their time and they slowed down and they looked at things a little bit deeper and a little bit more in depth. Group B made fewer attempts, but while they were failing, they also made fewer but more strategic changes. So instead of changing everything, they tried to be strategic and only change a couple of things. And most importantly, they sped up between attempts. They failed faster. So instead of ditching it all and starting over every time, they made a few strategic changes and they failed faster. Drop in the comments which one you think was more successful, Group A or Group B. Tried more often, changed a bunch of things, and took their time. Or tried fewer times, made more strategic changes, and went faster. If you are thinking Group B, you are correct. Group B was the group that succeeded more often. And that was not because they failed less, but because they were more strategic and they went faster in between attempts. So it's not just about try again. It's not just, hey, be more persistent, which is a lot of what we were taught as kids, right? Just keep going. Just be more persistent. If your business is not great, just follow up more. It's not about that. It's about iterations. Every time you follow up, you are strategically making changes and going faster. Great. I know this doesn't work, so I'm going to change this thing that's really important, and I'm going to fail again as quickly as possible so I can make more iterations. For those of us that are sitting back and going, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to really look at it, I'm going to analyze, I'm going to try and change a bunch of things, we're Group A. Group B is already failing 3 times ahead of us, and they are learning faster than we will ever. So 5 simple ways to incorporate more curiosity. 1, surprise, change is going to happen to us all the time. The market changes, our customers change, the technology changes. It's going to happen. It's going to keep happening. We're going to stop doing what we've always done. We're going to leave ordinary behind. We're going to take a risk. And we are going to return with a new mindset and a new idea. When we are faced with change, our brain is going to say, all right, Who are we choosing today? Assumption, it's never going to work, or enthusiasm, why the heck not? What if? We're going to ask better questions. We don't expect to know everything about everything, and so we are going to ask, and that is what's going to make it beautiful. And 4, we are going to bring others together. Carrots, onions, a little potatoes, maybe a ham bone, and we are going to make a beautiful soup. And lastly, we are going to fail faster than anybody else, because the more we fail, the faster we are, the more iterations we make, the more likely we are to be successful. So this is your final homework for the very last day of summer camp. I want you to choose. Do you want certainty? Do you want to do things the way you've always done them? Do you want to avoid change? Or do you want to choose curiosity? What if? Why not? YOLO. Why not? Our choices are move forward or stay put. And I don't know about you, but move forward, as scary and as frustrating as it sometimes is, it is still movement, friends. And that is ultimately the goal in our businesses, in our lives, in our marketing, in whatever we do. I don't know about you, but I am going to choose enthusiasm and risk. So my final piece of homework for you, friends, is this. Instead of saying, I can't, ask, what if? In fact, if you are a sticky note person like me, I've got a bunch of them around my computer screen. What if is one of them. I look at it every day. What if? What if? Why not? It's a great place to start. All right. I just want to remind you of this as we sign off for the last time. The goal of really great marketing is this: make people feel so that they will think differently, so they understand what it is that you do and the value you bring, so they will take action and remember you. The goal of marketing is not to be top of mind. The goal of marketing is for them to feel, think, understand, and do, and remember. As always, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed summer camp. I know I did. In the beginning of this, really did think, maybe no one's going to attend. Maybe I'm just going to be talking to myself. But I've gotten so many messages from so many of you that this has sparked ideas and moments of inspiration and aha. And I know it did for me as well. So thank you. Thank you for joining, for watching, for watching the replays. What you can do for me as you leave, take some action. And if you found value in this, share it with a friend. The replays will be available forever on YouTube at Valerie Garcia Speaks. So you can go and watch them back anytime you like. Feel free to share them. And if you found value in summer camp, if this is something that you appreciated, I didn't charge for it this year. This was something that I did because I really felt like we all needed a bit of inspiration. If you'd like to drop me a tip, you can use the QR code that is on the screen. That is always, always appreciated. All right. One last thing before we go. If you need help, if you are leaving here thinking, gosh, I wish I just had somebody to kind of help me get started on some of these ideas, I have office hours open throughout the rest of the summer. Access those. It's one-on-one coaching, 1 or 2 hour increments. And it is where we just dive in, take a look at something that you are working on in your business and take some action and get you started. So this is not a do it for you situation. This is a do it with you situation. And you can access those through officeHoursWithVal.com. All right, friends, that's it for me. Thank you for joining. I am off to actual summer camp with 73 of my family members. That's just brothers and sisters, their spouses and kids, and we are going camping for a week. So thoughts and prayers appreciated there. All right, y'all, go take action. Be more curious. Choose your fighter. I'm proud of you. Have a great rest of your summer. Bye, friends.